For centuries, the name Babylon has been associated with depravity, sin, and the image of a city punished by God. Especially in Western Christian culture, Babylon is not only a historical place, but also a symbol of everything that goes against moral standards. This originates from the stories in the Bible, typically the legend of the Tower of Babel. Accordingly, the people of Babylon had the ambition to build a tower as high as the sky, showing their arrogance before God. This action was considered a great insult, and as a result, God made them speak different languages so that they could not understand each other, causing the building to collapse in chaos. This story is not only a lesson about human limitations, but also a way for ancient religion to convey a profound prejudice about the dangers of collective ambition and defiance of theocracy, which Babylon is considered a typical example. Not stopping there, the image of Babylon in the Old Testament is described as the arch-enemy of Jerusalem, the holy city of the Jews. The contrast between the city of God and the city of the devil turned Babylon into a negative symbol in religious thinking that lasted for thousands of years. This became even more serious when, in the 6th century BC, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II captured Jerusalem, destroyed the Jewish temple, and took thousands of Jews to Babylon as slaves. This event is called the Babylonian captivity, the Babylonian exile, and is one of the greatest pains in Jewish history. From here, hatred gradually became mythologized. Babylon was seen as the embodiment of betrayal, cruelty, and immorality. Therefore, it is not surprising that in the following centuries, Western countries with strong Christian foundations continued to spread the image of Babylon as a moral warning. The phrase Babylon's prostitution or Babylon fell appears frequently in religious sermons, literature, and even in modern music and cinema. This obsession makes many people forget that Babylon was once a brilliant center of human civilization, the birthplace of ideas and systems that the world still inherits today. Understanding this is the key to helping us escape religious prejudice and look at history more fairly. Because if we only rely on stories passed down from one side, we will lose the opportunity to learn from a civilization that changed the course of humanity. And in the following sections, we will continue to peel back each layer of history to see more clearly Babylon. Not just a cursed city, but a symbol of the intelligence and creative ability that humans have achieved. Babylon is not only an ancient city in history, but also a symbol throughout the Bible, especially in the Old Testament. According to statistics from Bible scholars, Babylon is the second most mentioned name after Jerusalem. This shows its influence in Western religious thought. But it is worth noting that Babylon is always placed in the role of the villain, the destroyer, the corrupter, and the eternal enemy of God's people. In the Psalms, there are angry curses on Babylon, such as, "Blessed is he who takes your children and dashes them against the rocks." This is not just a personal curse, but reflects a collective consciousness, where Babylon becomes a model for all forces that oppose religious belief and divine order. This obsession does not stop in religious texts, but also deeply affects Western social thought for thousands of years to come. In European and North American culture, especially in Christian countries, the image of Babylon has fostered a trend called anti-urbanism, a latent suspicion and hatred of big cities. People began to see crowded cities as places where sin spawned, where people were alienated from nature, and where morality was easily corrupted. As a result, for centuries, large cities in the West rarely exceeded the threshold of 10 million people because urban development was always accompanied by the fear of Babylonization, that is, falling into chaos, greed, and godlessness. Interestingly, whenever Western society wanted to criticize a city for chaos, disorder, or moral decay, the name Babylon was brought up as a symbolic image. From ancient Rome to medieval London and more modern New York, all have been likened to the New Babylon. In some religious sects, New York is even called the Mother of Harlots, a name borrowed directly from the Book of Revelation in the New Testament. This shows that the influence of Babylon is not only historical or mythological, but has actually penetrated deeply into the cognitive structure of an entire culture. Babylon has become a negative yardstick used to measure the level of moral decline of modern society. And for that reason, the truly brilliant and progressive legacies of ancient Babylon have been forgotten, buried under a layer of religious prejudice. If we put aside the religious prejudice, we will see a surprising truth. Babylon was one of the first megacities of mankind, the place that laid the foundation for the modern concept of metropolis. According to researchers' estimates, at its peak, Babylon's population reached about 150,000 people, a huge number compared to ancient times. With such a scale, this city was not only the center of political power, but also the convergence of commerce, administration, culture, and religion. What was special about Babylon was its openness and organization. Contrary to the image of a dictatorial society, Babylon operated as a flexible system where talented people, regardless of ethnic origin, could be appreciated. This is a point that surprised many people, because even the Jews who were brought here during the exile were not completely excluded from society. On the contrary, many of them were appointed as officials participating in the state management apparatus. This shows that Babylon had a very high level of tolerance and pragmatism. They valued ability more than blood or ethnicity. Not stopping at the administrative structure, Babylon also possessed an incredibly developed economic and social network. This city needed a large number of workers to operate the machine, from merchants, engineers, soldiers, officials, to the common working class. Each group of people had a place in the urban ecosystem, and to ensure sustainability, Babylon constantly expanded its territory and brought in new residents from conquered lands, thereby creating a multi-ethnic, multicultural society, but still united by an extremely systematic legal system and organization. Babylon also stood out for its ability to integrate technical, architectural, and logistical achievements to serve urban life. This was not a city that grew spontaneously. It was a carefully planned strategic urban model with clear goals of maintaining order, generating wealth, and consolidating central power. They knew that to maintain a great city, they needed to control the flow of people, goods, and information. And Babylon had done that for thousands of years. Babylon was not only a center of power and military power, but also a place of cultural and economic achievements far beyond its time. Many modern people would be surprised to learn that thousands of years ago, this city had commercial activities, education, law, and organizational technology that were comparable to, even superior to, many later periods in human history. Socially, Babylon possessed very unique and ahead of its time living models. Among them, the most prominent was the marriage market, where girls were publicly auctioned according to their appearance, talent, and qualities. Although it may be considered offensive by today's standards, this is evidence that Babylon had clear social mechanisms to regulate marriage and family relations. In parallel, the city also had red light districts where women openly engaged in prostitution. For the Jews, who had a strict gender culture, this was a symbol of decadence. But from a modern urban perspective, it was a manifestation of diversity and acceptance of differences in an open society. Culturally, Babylon was a pioneer in storing knowledge. They engraved their lives' laws and knowledge on tens of thousands of clay tablets in cuneiform, one of the earliest systems of writing in the world. Not only did they record history or law, these tablets also contained information on astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and even weather forecasting. This shows that the Babylonians not only remembered the present, but also sought to control the future, a mindset typical of a highly organized and visionary society. Economically, Babylon surprisingly operated a primitive market economy for millennia. People could buy and sell land hire workers and exchange goods for silver, the common form of currency at that time. Prices fluctuated according to supply and demand, and wages varied according to the seasons, suggesting that a labor market existed. Remarkably, when modern economists converted ancient units of measurement, they found that the average wage of a Babylonian worker was much higher than that of a European worker in the Middle Ages. In addition, education and scholarship in Babylon were highly developed. They had libraries, museums, and state-run schools. Children in the middle class were taught reading, writing, mathematics, and law, something that was rare in other civilizations of the time. And most notably, Babylon was one of the few ancient societies that allowed talented people, regardless of their background, to advance in the hierarchy of power. This selection system created a positive, competitive environment, helping Babylon attract and nurture talented people from all over. The history of Babylon was not only built with bricks, stones, and laws, but also by the great men who contributed to shaping the destiny of this city. Throughout its thousands of years of existence, Babylon was associated with 4 historical figures of legendary stature, each representing a glorious period or an important turning point, leaving a deep mark on the minds of posterity. The first and greatest symbol of Babylon was King Hammurabi, who reigned around the 18th century BC. He was not only the conqueror who unified the entire ancient Mesopotamia, but also the one who created the Hammurabi Code, one of the first written legal systems of mankind, famous for the principle of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But few people know that more than half of the 282 laws were related to economics, trade, property, ownership, wages, labor contracts. This proves that Babylon under Hammurabi was not only militarily strong, but also laid a solid legal foundation for a complex economy, a rare feature in any ancient civilization. The second figure who also made Babylon prominent in religious stories and epics was Nebuchadnezzar II, who reigned in the 6th century BC. Under his leadership, Babylon reached the height of its power, becoming the largest city in the ancient world. He was the one who ordered the construction of legendary structures such as the Tower of Babel, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and the triple-layered wall system so thick that 2 chariots could run side by side on top. Although the Jews have portrayed it as the invader who destroyed Jerusalem in terms of urban design, Nebuchadnezzar II was the one who brought Babylon to the stature of the first megacity in history. Next came Alexander the Great, who conquered almost the entire ancient world. After defeating the Persian Empire, Alexander set foot in Babylon and was immediately captivated by the city. He intended to make Babylon the capital of his global empire. But while preparing for his campaign to conquer the Arabian Peninsula, he suddenly died in Nebuchadnezzar's palace. His sudden death not only ended the ambitions of a young king, but also marked the end of Babylon's last golden age. Finally, in modern times, the name Saddam Hussein suddenly appeared as a controversial figure associated with the legacy of Babylon. President of Iraq since 1979, Hussein always considered himself a spiritual descendant of Nebuchadnezzar. In 1989, he announced the revival of Babylon by building a new 600-room palace right on the ancient ruins. The new bricks all bear the inscription, "Babylon was reborn under Saddam Hussein." Although this action has been criticized as arrogant and disrespectful to archaeology, it is undeniable that Hussein made the modern world look back at Babylon with curiosity and attention. His ambition to restore the past has unintentionally awakened memories of a once glorious empire in human history. Overall, these 4 figures, Hammurabi, Nebuchadnezzar, Alexander, and Saddam Hussein, are not just rulers, but living symbols of each period of Babylon's development, collapse, and revival. Each person carries a different aspiration, from establishing a legal order, building a megacity, expanding the empire, to regenerating history. And it is through these people that we see that Babylon is never just a name. It is an immortal symbol of power, creativity, and the desire to dominate the world. One of the less discussed but impressive aspects of Babylon was its remarkable development in science, technology, and urban organization, achievements that not only surpassed those of its contemporaries, but also laid the foundations for important areas of modern society. Far from being a mythical city or a place of depravity, Babylon was in fact the foremost intellectual center of the ancient world. First of all, its achievements in mathematics and surveying. Living in an environment with two large rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, whose flow frequently changed and caused sudden floods, the Babylonians were forced to develop precise surveying techniques to divide the land after each low water season. This is the reason why they developed a base sextile number system, a basis that is still used today to measure time 60 seconds, 60 minutes, and angles 360 degrees in a circle. Clay tablets recorded mathematical formulas measurements, and there is even clear evidence that the Babylonians applied Pythagoras' theorem thousands of years before the Greek mathematician of the same name. Next came astronomy and meteorology, a field in which Babylon is considered a pioneer. They not only observed the sky with the naked eye, but also recorded the movements of the planets' eclipses and thus created the 12-sign zodiac system that the world still uses today. The Babylonians also predicted the weather and seasons based on the positions of the constellations, showing the deep connection between science and agricultural life. These records were recorded on cuneiform clay tablets, many of which are still intact today. In addition to mathematics and astronomy, Babylonian medicine also reached an impressive level. Ancient documents show that they made diagnoses based on symptoms combining theory with practical experience. Notably, Hippocrates himself, who was known as the father of modern medicine in Greece, admitted that he learned a lot from the Babylonian literature and treatment methods. Not only did Babylonia excel in theory, it was also a master of urban management. The city possessed an advanced drainage system and irrigation canals, which helped control floods and ensure a year-round water supply for both agriculture and daily life. They also built large roads paved with asphalt, one of the rare examples of modern building materials in ancient times. The walls, palaces, temples, and the Tower of Babel all showed a very high level of construction techniques with the ability to organize labor and control materials extremely effectively. All of these achievements not only demonstrated Babylon's material strength, but also demonstrated a practical, logical, and systematic scientific thinking. They did not build cities just to show their power, but to solve the problem of survival, social management, and exploiting human potential to the fullest. Therefore, if we only look at Babylon through the lens of religion or myth, we will miss one of the greatest chapters in human history, where intelligence, technology, and urban organization were harmoniously combined to create a civilization with lasting influence to this day. And in the next section, you will see that Babylon was not only the birthplace of science, but also the place where the first principles of the market economy and universal education were formed, something that the modern world would have to wait thousands of years to reach. Babylon was not just an ancient city, it was a living symbol of social evolution, deeply reflecting how humans faced their own aspirations, power, and limitations. Although buried in the sands of time, the legacy that Babylon left behind still resonates today, not only through its architecture and writings, but also in the way humans organized society, created laws, operated economies, and exploited knowledge. One of the most important messages that Babylon left behind was that chaos is not an obstacle, but a catalyst for innovation and progress. It was precisely because Babylon was a place where many different ethnicities, cultures, and religions converged that it became an open, dynamic, and pioneering city. Their knowledge was preserved, debated, and developed. It was this diversity, sometimes full of contradictions, that created the motivation for Babylon to surpass all the limits of the times. In addition, Babylon's legacy is a reminder that power comes with responsibility and that arrogance can be the downfall of the greatest empires. The city that was once the center of the ancient world, once dreamed of reaching the heavens with its colossal structures, was eventually forgotten because of political upheavals and uncontrolled power fantasies. From Hammurabi to Alexander the Great, from Nebuchadnezzar II to Saddam Hussein, Great men have staked their fates on Babylon, but history has proven that no one can possess an eternal symbol. From a modern perspective, Babylon also leaves humanity a sobering lesson in how we remember and evaluate the past. For thousands of years, the name Babylon has been transformed into a symbol of sin and depravity, tarnished by religious prejudice and moral ideology. But as archaeology and historical science peel back the layers of buried culture, we come to a clear truth: every civilization has many faces, and it is the honesty with which we look back that determines the direction of the future. Ultimately, Babylon shows us that a city, or a civilization, does not survive in bricks and mortar, but in ideas. The principles of justice, law, education, commerce, and even academic freedom that Babylon founded remain the pillars of modern society today. As historian Ben Wilson puts it, a city that does not inspire human desire is a pile of bricks and mortar. Babylon did, and so it lives on in human memory as proof that the light of civilization is never completely extinguished as long as there are people willing to learn and tell its story. Stay tuned to discover more ancient cities where lessons about people, power, and life are still valuable for today's world. Don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss out on surprising and profound journeys of discovery like Babylon.